Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Edward Greenspon, President and CEO, Public Policy Forum.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Last year, I spoke from this stage about the need to face up to the disinformation and hate polluting the new digital public square and fouling our democracy. Here's a small example of disinformation from something calling itself the Vatican Inquirer. Take a look at this for a minute. And then look at the original. Justin Trudeau taking his son out for Halloween as the Little Prince. At PPF, we're continuing our work on understanding the spread of disinformation, misogyny, online racism, you name it, and what can be done to counter it. But tonight I want to speak about a different challenge emanating from our technological age, what automation, robotics, and AI are doing to how people earn their livings and forge their identities. Now, I've been concerned about the future of work, believe it or not, since high school. When I read Kurt Vonnegut's biting satire, Player Piano, a worrier before his time. It portrayed a society in which technology had pushed most everyone, other than an engineering elite, out of real work. Instead, they played the lotteries and swept the streets. Now, a player piano is a brilliant metaphor, a mechanical device that produces music without human hand touching keyboard. Decades on, the opening lines of Vonnegut's book continue to resonate. Ilium, New York, is divided into three parts. In the Northwest are the managers and engineers and civil servants and a few professional people. In the Northeast are the machines. And in the South, across the Iroquois River, is the area known locally as Homestead, where almost all of the people live. Now, this futuristic vision seemed pretty soulless to me. In high school, I delivered papers, bagged groceries, swept floors, sold cable TV over the phone. Even then, it was clear to me that work had meaning beyond making money, and that the people in Player Piano were being denied access to the social meaning. Today, we live in the seeming paradox of low unemployment and labor shortages alongside a strong undercurrent of anxiety and foreboding about the future. Indeed, we are in one of those rare periods when the capacity for social adaptability falls out of sync with the pace of technological innovation. And so managing the human dimension becomes the issue of our times. Technology brings good things, of course, great things. Increased standards of living, previously unimagined services that shrink the world, liberation from the low-tech tyranny that condemned my grandmother and her generation to scrubbing clothes for hours on end. And it brings new opportunities. Today, all kinds of people are employed in creative jobs that didn't exist a decade ago. They're app developers and social media managers, drone operators and data miners. Even the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs is an analytics guy, which I'm not sure the coach likes. Our keynote speaker this evening, Yoshua Bengio, is an AI scientist and an AI ethicist. Both are relatively new job categories. Last week, PPF released a new competitiveness study by fellows Robert Asselin and Sean Spear called A New North Star. It focuses on the new intangibles economy, one where wealth resides more in intellectual property, data, and brands than in physical assets like plants and machinery. And despite its obvious dynamism, this intangibles economy is not a dazzling jobs machine. The value of Google's parent company is about $850 billion. But at the end of 2018, it employed fewer than 100,000 people worldwide. Meanwhile, after decades of downsizing, General Motors, with 1/16 the market cap, still had 180,000 workers. We're told that technological change puts anywhere from 14% to 47% of jobs or tasks within jobs at risk. The anxiety out there is not unreasonable. So there's policy work to be done to make sure we A, produce as many winners as possible, those AI scientists and app developers, and B, put in place new tools for those who need to get back on their feet. The responsibility falls on all of us, governments, employers, unions, educational institutions, and individuals themselves, think tanks too. The Public Policy Forum is in the early stages of a 3-year research program we call Brave New Work. We published our first paper 2 weeks ago. It showed that the workers most in need of training are the least likely to get it, and that Canada's spending on training is 1/7 that of the top countries and just half the OECD average. So we will be holding a major future work conference in this building on June 26th, and our team invites you to join us. And here's some of the things that we'll be discussing. How do we modernize policies designed for an old binary era, one in which you were either in work, out of work, in school or out of school, in retirement or not yet retired? We all know we now live in a post-binary world, one with blurry lines. We heard at the Growth Summit today about how efforts in Alberta to retrain coal industry workers before their jobs disappear were initially rebuffed by governments. Why? Because programs aren't designed to kick in until workers are officially unemployed. So we need to ensure policy tools catch up with post-binary realities. Another issue we're working on is what we call the messy middle. Our education system, however imperfect, is just that, a system. So is our retirement system. They have multiple programs and institutions that connect up. But the middle, where people in their 30s to 50s need help with change, is ad hoc and opaque. We need to turn the messy middle into a system too. Lots of people also talk about a gig economy and a lack of pensions and benefits. There are models from which we can learn. Actors, entertainment industry members are gig workers. These are gig workers, and they receive benefits. So we need, as it is in the construction trades also, to look for innovative solutions under our nose, as well as figuring out new answers. Finally, we need to ensure the opportunity side is inclusive. The World Economic Forum and LinkedIn have found that 78% of AI professionals are men, and only 22% are women. So to perpetuate gender gaps and throw social progress into reverse is just to be on the wrong side of history. Now, there's much consternation about technological change giving rise to populism. There's lots that needs to be understood. One of our researchers is examining attitudes of the most economically anxious, and the early turns are quite interesting. They're even encouraging. They indicate that populism is not necessarily the first resort of the vulnerable. What they want are practical solutions to the things that make them anxious. Only in the absence of credible policy do they turn to anti-system answers. At last year's Growth Summit, Mark Carney spoke about something called the Engels Pause. The Engels Pause was essentially a 20-year period in the early stages of the Industrial Revolution during which wages stagnated, even though per capita income was growing. In other words, increasing inequality. Sounds familiar. Eventually, it sorted itself out, but not before Marx and Engels gained a following that divided Europe for more than a century. A modern Engels pause would again extract a heavy toll, especially given how the digital world enables aggrieved parties to form tribes that in turn can be put to their own uses by those intent on preying on their vulnerability. So ladies and gentlemen, you are all friends of good public policy. I hope you will join us for our Brave New Work Conference, June 26th. Please mark it in your calendar. Reform is the only credible response when technological change butts up against the social contract. If we put our heads together, we can make sure those reforms produce smart, forward-looking policies that give people the chance they deserve to adjust and continue sharing in Canada's prosperity. Thank you.